Hey guys, welcome back. So, in the last 3 to 4 episodes, we covered how to integrate Carthage to your project, and we included some dependencies like RxSwift and Socket.io. We then did a small validation on the login flow, like the username and email validation using RxSwift. And before we could make a connection to the WebSocket, which we finally did on login tab. But we did not actually do much on the tap of the login button. Ideally, it should have taken us to something like a home page or something. So we did not do that. So today, what we are going to do is we will set up tab bar as a module and then include three view controllers in that, which is the chat rooms, friends, and the profile section. So we are going to include that. Then we are going to add table views for the chat room and the friends section, but we will not load any data in that right now because we are yet to connect the server to it. So what we will do is we will set an empty view, a nice looking custom view, as the default view or the background view of the table view. That's what we will do as a next thing after we are done with the setting up the tab bar. So once that is done, we will set the tab bar as the root view controller on tap of the login button. So that it navigates to the home screen, a nice looking one, which is more like a tab bar view itself. And finally, what we can do is we will set up a framework for themes, which is the idea behind is that we don't apply the themes or the color schemes and everything. We will not keep that within the modules itself, but we will abstract it away to a section called themes, which can be like any kind of custom themes. Right now we will focus on the light theme, but then later when we progress during the project towards the end of it, we'll apply as well as a dark theme. So when the application theme changes from, let's say, a light to dark theme, which I have kept in the profile section, as well as you can also go to the dark theme of the device, and if you change it, it will apply even the theme that we have defined in the themes. So that's the idea in today's tutorial, cover these things. So let's get started. Let's start by showing you what we have right now. So we have this uh, screen flow right now where you have a landing page. You start and then you get a login screen. From there you enter some credentials. If it is valid, then your login button is enabled. You hit on that, it validates with the WebSocket and gives you a callback saying the login is successful for the user. So this login flow is happening actually on the WebSocket, so which we had discussed in the last episode, and you're getting a response callback saying login successful for user. So which is happening somewhere in the presenter of the chat room login flow, this presenter. So we are getting a callback here, and we are saying let's route to the tab bar screen right now. So for that to happen, we need to define something, some modules right now. First being the tab bar itself, and then three modules: the chat rooms, friends, and the profile. Three things we need to add as frameworks. Then we integrate that within the tab bar, and then we enable the login flow to happen from here. So for the login flow to happen from here, first thing first, we need to go to the login, chat room login, go to the router, and we need to create within the router routing a function route to window. So we are just asking it route to back to the window itself. So once you have defined it, it will give you an error. Implement that function. So you have a function, and now you need to call this from the same place where we are saying route to the tab bar screen. So we can just say router and router dot route to window. So now the flow is defined. Now that we just need to make this routing happen, let's go back to the router and let's define a callback here on login escaping function callback. It's happening, it's not accepting anything, it's just a void closure. It's also defined this as a private property on login closure. That's it. And then let's initialize that. So once you receive it from the builder or some way, you just initialize it here, and it's going to give me an error, but then we'll resolve that. But whatever needs to happen is we just call this on login, we just call this closure, so that we know this closure is going to be delegated or getting called somewhere as a function, and then it'll give this callback to that same place. So where is that is going to happen? Let's go back. So you just see the flow here. On login button, login validates using the use case with the server, gives a callback saying login is successful. Instantly we are saying to the router, you now delegate this work back to the place where it started, which is the window itself. So this is the window callback which we are giving to the window, the callback that we are defining here. So this callback we need to define in the builder as well, because that is where it is getting created. Chatroom login, it is asking for a parameter on login. So we need to pass this through the builder. On login, escaping, same stuff. Just pass this login here. Now it's fine. So only place where it is going to give an error is wherever we are building this module. So in the router, as a submodule, whatever we had defined is login without any closure. So we need to make it with a closure. So this is the submodules which is being accepted by the window. So it should actually map with whatever modules that you're building. Let's say even if it is a landing page, structure should be the same. These are all closures. Escaping closure. Now it should be fine. Okay, we need to define the closure. No errors, but then it's going to give an error here where it is actually getting the callback. So this is where we are triggering the route to login. This is where the login screen gets launched. We see this login screen from when this router function gets called, and it is giving a callback as soon as that tap has happened of the login button. This one, you are getting this callback, you are delegating this callback back to where it started, which is this router of the window. Once you get it, we can get rid of this, because now it is accepting a callback. So this is my where it happens. Callback, I get it. Login, what can we say? Launch the tab bar from here. I'm just keeping a comment here. So it should end to end, it should be fine now. Just that once you define that tab bar right now, we will include it as a submodule and then launch that tab bar from here. That's the idea here. So I think it's pretty simple. So let's see what goes on right now. It should give me this launch the tab bar, that print, so that I can start wiring that feature of creating the tab bar right now. Login, launch the tab bar from here. So we get this. So it's coming back here. So all that we now need to do is whatever we were doing here, set this root view controller to a tab bar controller instead of this login, because login's flow is over. Once you hit the tab, if it validates with the server, and if it is valid, you navigate to the tab bar. That's the idea here. So that's what we're going to do here. So let's start defining our tab bar. So let's do that. Let's create a target called tab bar, add it, move it within the modules, compile. It should give an error because it's outside, it's within that module section right now. Let's fix that. Let's connect modules. Let's connect. Oh, I modified something else. wrongly. This is not the one. Go to the tab bar. Let's connect modules, tab bar info. Compile, it should be fine now. Only that we need to change the target from 13.2 to 13. I'm just keeping it 13. You can even make it 11 because mostly once your new release happens, you keep the two versions previous to it as the target. Mostly that's the norm. So I'm just keeping it as 13 because it's just a tutorial. So once you go to the real projects, maybe you'll have to support up to 11. So because 13 has released now. And that's the tab bar created. Now I need to create a view controller for the tab bar. UITabbarController is the type I'm expecting, so I'm just maybe call it as let's connect tab bar controller without any XIB. Just creating that. It should be within the tab bar. Create it, give the template, and compile. It should be fine. Now let's create other stuff. Like for a VIPER module, you need all of these, like a builder, the builder and presenter, router, builder is created. Maybe I'll just keep it as UI kit because once you create the class and return type will be UI view controller, so it should import UI kit. Class is builder, and I'm going to keep it as public final because I'm not inheriting anything, and the function being build returns UI view controller, and I'm going to keep it as static public. So I need to be able to access it from outside of this framework, so keeping it public. So let's define init for this. So I need inits. I need to pass the tabs, and okay, this is return view controller. So first thing first, UITabbarController. Let's go to UITabbarController and create an init. I need a regular init which will accept right now it needs to accept tabs. It should ask me to also implement the required init because that's how it works. So within this I need to call super.init. I guess this should be okay, designated. So init needs name and bundle. I'm just gonna keep it nil. That compiles. Now we have an init available. So go there. You can just say, so that it does not give me an error, tabbarcontroller dot let's connect tabbarcontroller, instantiate that, returning that it's now compiling proper. Now what we need is to define a type alias where we can define the tab bar modules required. So I can just say let's connect tabs. I'm just keeping it consistent with my tutorial code which I have already defined. This can be an init parameter. You can just call it as tabs. Right now it's accepting nothing, but still I'm just passing it init, asking for tabs, nothing. Right now we don't have any tab. I have not defined any tabs, but that is how it's going to work, returning UITabbarController. But we also need association between a builder and a view controller and everything. Let's create that as well. New file. I need a presenter. Class presenter. So I'm actually going to define a template right now. which can be used all across. Protocol, presentation, and this will be implemented by presenter, extension, maybe it can be directly implemented, public class presenter, and don't need to be public, it can be, because we are not exposing our presenter to external modules. And presenter is going to have a reference of view controller which we are going to add, but then before that let's do some stuff. Let's create the template which I was talking about. If it needs use cases, then let's define it as a template, and then this will also require some, okay, it needs to be a variable use case. Let's create that use case variable as well. And then we are initting, create an init for this using the use cases, so self.use cases equal to use cases. So that's how you're going to pass the use case if there are any use cases required for the presenter. This is more like a template which you might not even pass anything to it, but then if you have created it as a template, then you can reuse it all across maybe. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of how to create that. So we have the presenter right now, and presenter needs to know about the view controller, for which we are gonna, then a slight deviation from whatever we have done with the other modules. I'm going to create a view for this. It's more like a pure VIPER protocol based approach. Protocol, I'm calling it tab bar view, and it's going to be of class. I'm going to implement this for this view controller extension. Let's connect tab bar controller implements tab bar view. That's it. If you need, let's say this, if you need to have a reference of the view controller in your presenter, this is how I'm going to do in a different way here. And so we go to the presenter and define a weak variable of the tab bar view. Maybe I can just call it as view itself, tab bar view. That's done. Presenter is done. Let's create the router. Router should have UIKit import class router. It should be implementing routing as a protocol. I'm just going to create that within the presenter. Routing, implement that within the router. That's it. Init, and what are things you need within init? We need the view controllers. So view controller needs to be referenced, and let's create a private let view controller. Why view controller? It should be require should be optional. Yeah. Created. So We can associate our view controller to the router. Presenter has can also be referenced through this. That's also defined. So let's create this router. Okay, it's created in a different way because we need to pass the uh, references of at least the modules which should be loaded as the tab bar items through a function. So I'm going to extend this router. It's already extended. Plus I'm going to have another extension just specific to creating a function called tabs, which where we will be passing the submodules which are required to create the tabs. So this is going to accept the modules and then convert it into the tab bar items. That's the idea here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create a submodules section within this because we anyway need it. Type alias submodules, which are more like the tab bar items. The submodules is what is going to get created as a tab bar item. So submodules, whatever we're going to pass, are going to be, right now let's keep it empty because I have not created any items yet. So it's going to accept some modules. So I'm just going to say using tabs is going to get created using submodules. So these are my submodules. It's going to get created to the tab bar items which we defined, like here the let's connect tabs. So we need to return this static function return. Right now we don't have any tab bar items, empty. We can even return because we are not defined anything, but this is going to come into use pretty soon. So that is one function we are defining within the router called tabs, which will accept the submodules, which are the frame modules which we are going to create, called friends, profile, and third one being the chat rooms, the main one. So those are which we are going to pass here. Those are going to get translated to the tab bar items and then we return it. So that's going to happen in builder. So let's go back to the builder. Builder is right now just creating let's connect tab bar controller and accepting tabs. Tabs is nothing but whatever we defined here as the let's connect tabs, the type alias. So go back to the builder. Let's create the submodules. I'm just gonna say, okay, one more thing. This has to return UI tab bar controller, but ideally base class is always anyway UI view controller itself, but let's keep it as UI tab bar controller itself. And I'm just gonna say let tab bar controller equals this. Finally this is what anyway is going to get returned, tab bar controller. And one other thing is I need to pass the these tabs are fine, but before that we need to create the tabs from the like the function we defined in the router. Right now we need to create the tabs. I'm just gonna say submodules equals, right now it is empty but it is of the type submodules. I think router dot submodules. So this is my submodules and I'm going to use this to create my tabs. Let tabs is equal to router dot, we defined a function right now called what did we define as tabs itself, which is accepting router dot submodules. This is the one. So I can just pass this submodules using submodules, and it is creating item of type, let's connect tabs. So it's created. Now this is what we are passing. I'm just going to replace this because once we have the submodules defined, it's going to create use the submodules to create the tab bar items, and then we can just pass it to the view controller, which in turn will associate that tab bar items here. The tab bar items addition is not yet happened because we are not defined the submodules yet, but we have the tab bar module ready right now for use. Also, we need to create the presenter and associate that. Let's do that. Let's create, let presenter equals presenter, which accepts use cases. We don't have any use cases right yet. Can I just pass empty? And presenter needs to know about the view controller. It's happening at a later point. Okay, so presenter is created here. Now presenter has a view reference, which is this tab bar controller. You can just pass that. And the other kind of reference where a view controller needs to know about the presenter, it's not needed yet because we will have a function call happening, because presenter will have a reference to view controller. We'll add that now. So let's create that reference. Where presenter presentation, through the presentation is what we are going to refer it. So that's also done. We can reference it back to the view dot, which is actually the tab bar controller. I can just call this as the view, return that view, and view dot presenter is equal to presenter. The reverse reference has also happened. So we have the whole dependency created for the tab bar controller and it is actually returning a tab bar view controller right now. So maybe it's, as a first step, we can use this to actually set the root view controller once you transition from this login tab to the tab bar controller. That can happen right now. We will create, once that is done, we will start creating the other modules which are needed to be loaded as part of the tab bar controller. So let's create that. So we have the tab bar. Go back to, let's go back to the window, add a reference of tab bar, done. Go to the builder and create, go to the builder of window and then create the tab bar module. Not accepting anything, just returns. I can just keep it as UI view controller because that's the base type. Accepting that, that's it. And now I can transition from this to that. So I have the builder reference, need to pass it. Need to import tab bar now. Let tab bar module equals to tab bar dot builder dot build, then pass that. That's compiling. So let's go back to the routing side. This is where it has to happen. So I have let tab bar view equals self dot submodules dot tab bar module, instantiate that. It's returning a tabbar view controller, tabbar controller right now. All that I need to do is whatever I was doing, window dot root view controller equals to, just set that as tabbar controller, and then self dot window dot make key invisible. Compiles fine. So maybe now let's see whether it shows something, whether it transitions from the login to the tabbar screen right now. Let's try that. Run it. It's going somewhere. It's launching a tab bar, but it has nothing. It's just showing a blank screen, but it is actually transitioned to a new screen, which is the using the router. It has loaded that tab bar, but we need to start adding things to this right now. So it's a blank screen. Let's start doing that by adding the new modules which is required.